Welcome back. I'm going to try to solve some more puzzles today because I need to practice, as do we all. All right, and I will try to explain my thinking as I go. Sometimes that doesn't help. Let's see. I do have a couple of checks in this position. And I think I have one that's just checkmate. Okay. Took me a little too long to see that, but the first thing that we look for is checks, and the first check that I saw was here. But it looked like the opponent could just block with the knight. But that was the second check I saw, and there is no enemy piece that can attack that square. Obviously, it's too close for anything to get in between the two pieces to block, and it is guarded by the bishop. Whereas the bishop and the rook together cut off any possible escape squares for the king. So that should just be checkmate. Okay. Next. Okay. The only checks I have are this one and this one, I think. Neither one of those looks great. I mean, that's a check too, but that just gives up the queen. Wait, is that it? If I check here and the king takes, then I win the queen and have only a queen left. I mean, I have a knight left, which that will be the only piece on the board. Okay, wow, I'm surprised I saw that. That was a good simplification exercise near the end of the game to win the bishop with my queen, basically forcing the take back. And of course, if the king had just gotten out of check, I would have won the queen straight away. So the king's best move was to take my queen. And then I went here with a check, which I win the queen. And now, being one pawn up as well as a knight, I am winning. Okay. Let's see. I do have a couple of checks. That check, I think, just results in losing a rook. I also have this check, which protects the rook. It's not quite checkmate because the king could go here, but then I will check again and win the queen. I think that's it. Okay. Surprised I saw that one too. I just clicked start over on this one to show that that this is a protected check. The king protects the bishop, and then the bishop not only checks but protects the rook. And because the rook is cutting off these squares, and my king is cutting off this square, and the bishop is cutting off this square, the king's only legal move was to go to e3. And then, of course, my rook would check here. At that point here, when I checked, I'm curious as to why the rook didn't block. Okay, I see it now. If the rook blocked, I would just capture it and still be protected by my bishop and still win the queen. So yeah, the smartest move was for the king to get out of the way and for me to win the rook. Okay. I am playing with the white pieces. Ooh, I'm down a piece because my opponent has a knight. But I'm kind of stuck in the corner. But I think that's checkmate. Okay. This relied on seeing that my king, well, my pawn cuts off that square, and my king cuts off this square. And my g-pawn protects, of course, my f-pawn. And from here, my queen is protected by the f-pawn and cuts off all of these squares. Okay. I have a check here that's protected by the queen. Also protected by the bishop. So I'm thinking that might be it. Check. The king could move. Out of check. And if it did, I'm not sure what my best follow-up would be. I mean, I would just win the knight outright. If the king, of course, at that point has to move out of check. And if it moves that way, then anywhere we put the rook is check from this bishop over here. But if we take the knight and the king moves to the d file, to d1, then I'm not sure what our next move is, because we're in trouble down here. Of course, once our rook is out of the way, our king, oh no, that'll still be mate because their knight guards that square too. So we have to check on every move or it's mate. Right here. That's the thing. We have to check on every move or it's mate, because our king can't escape this. Right? But our rook can move. I was going to say our rook can move, and then from there it would be protecting this square. But then that piece wouldn't be protected. Maybe I should be more worried about this mating threat than I am about checking down there. I do notice that if I push this pawn, then that pawn, my f-pawn, would protect the g-pawn, which is not defended right now, and my rook over here would protect the g-rook. So maybe that's actually my better move. And if I do this first, and the king moves out of check that way, and then I do this, the rook isn't protecting the other rook. It's probably wrong, but I think I would play this pawn move to protect that rook, and the pawn protects the pawn at the same time. But I have a feeling that's not right. So, yeah, that's not right. Okay. Was it the check then? Okay, it was the check, and the king did move there, but we don't have a good follow-up, and that was my problem with this, is that we have to check again. Because the rook just takes back, and wait, is it here? Maybe it's there. That forces the king to take back, and then we have mate here. Okay, well, I didn't see that, but now we did. I didn't think that I had a follow-up mating procedure down there, and I thought we had to do something about this situation. We live and we learn. Let's move on to the next puzzle. Okay. We do have a couple of checks. For one thing, that's just a free knight, because this bishop is pinned. The opponent's light squared bishop is pinned, so I think we can just take the knight. I don't know if that's the best move, but I do know we can just take it. And I think the opponent didn't realize that we could. That was the best move. Okay, this puzzle was just about seeing the pin. I looked around for a second and I didn't see anything better, so let's go on to the next puzzle. Here we have, anywhere we move this bishop will be check, revealed by our other rook. So the question, I think, is where do we move the bishop? And one place I would like to move it is here, because their bishop is not defended at the moment. So if we move our bishop to f5, that's discovered check from this rook. The king could not go here because our bishop would be cutting off these squares, and our e-file rook is cutting off these, and our c-file rook is cutting off these squares. So the king would have only two choices at that point. Oh, and then I think we could take that, and it might be mate. I think that's checkmate because our bishop protects that square. Okay. Took me a little bit to figure that out, so we only got 5 points, but as usual, I'm not concerned as much about the points as I am about understanding the tactics and seeing these patterns on the board. Oh, I'm playing with the black pieces here. Okay. Well, I'm down an exchange. I have a knight for one of those opponent rooks. Let's see. They do have a couple of checks. One is there, one is here. That one looks bad. D5, because I think they can take that 2 different ways. What's wrong with this check? My 2 knights cut off these squares from the king. And with my rook on b2, I would be cutting off these squares from the king. So it would be forced to move to one of those spots. And I think if it moved to a5, I would have a follow-up check here. And if it moved to a6, I would have the follow-up check here. And I think we would end up with a mate pretty quickly. Although I didn't follow it all the way out. See, this is a check here. And that also not only checks the king, but it guards the getaway square. So it would force the king to go back where it was, and then we would have mate. Okay. Well, we have a handful of checks, but there are just a lot of pieces guarding that square, so I don't think that's good. But also all the checks down this file are protected as well by the queen. And of course the bishop is protecting that square as well. So there is I almost said that was a free piece, but look at there. The bishop is protecting that. This one I have no idea. I really don't. Like there's not a really good place to move the queen, I guess. Not that I would want to, but like I'm what moves do we have available? If we check here, the queen just captures, and even if we captured back with the rook, then the king would get our rook too. And then we don't have a good follow-up that I can see. If we check here, very similar situation, except maybe the bishop captures. I don't know. And then obviously if we take back, that's not good. And if we take here, again, the queen captures, and if we take back, the king takes back, and we've lost 2 pieces for a queen. A queen and a rook. Bishop takes us, pawn takes us. Excuse me. I'm lost on this one, and no idea. I can go, like none of the checks look good to me, but I can move my queen over here and threaten the rook, and then the rook's gonna move. Oh no, the rook would just move here and protected by the knight and threaten me back. So that's not good. I could go here and threaten the rook, but kind of the same thing. That's no good. The bishop just takes it. And I know that gets the bishop off this diagonal, so I could then take the knight. But yeah, I have nothing. Okay, well, in order to keep this video from being longer, I'm just going to check. I have to make a move in order to get counted wrong so I can find out what was right. Okay, I knew that wasn't it because that didn't make any sense. We're going to click the hint button. It was the knight check, the very first thing that I said, and the pawn would take. Okay, I kind of assumed that the pawn would take. And then I would take back. How in the world was that the solution? I have no idea. I'm going to go to the analysis board. Sometimes when I see the solution, then the light bulb clicks on in my head, and it's obvious. Oh, that's what I should have done. Here it was not obvious at all. What the opponent should have played here for some reason was queen to d8. But they did not. In our puzzle, they played queen to e7. And that was a huge blunder because we can check here, apparently. I don't know why that gives us such a big advantage. Right now, material appears to be equal. We're actually up a pawn because they only have 4 pawns. We have 5 pawns. Otherwise, we each have a rook, a queen, a knight, and a bishop. So giving away our knight for a pawn doesn't seem like a huge advantage to me. But that's what it says we should do. And it says it's a little better for them to take back with the pawn, which I would assume. And then our only move that maintains our advantage is to take with the pawn. And then I assume they would move their bishop at that point to continue guarding the knight. Wouldn't they just go here? It says they wouldn't. It says their best move is to put the queen in front of our pawn. What? Then wouldn't we just take their bishop with our pawn? Why wouldn't they move the bishop? For example, here. That's okay, that's horrible. That's why they wouldn't move the bishop, because then we would have a mating sequence. Mate in 7. Oh, well, we would fork the king and queen here. Well, why didn't the puzzle go one more move then? I would have seen that, I think. We're supposed to see that after the puzzle stops here and be like, haha, we won. Yeah, that's frustrating. The puzzle shouldn't end before this. What happened is obvious, and that's only a 1400 rated puzzle. We're not talking about a 2500 rated puzzle here. Sorry, I'll stop complaining. I need to train, so I'm going to go on to the next puzzle. Okay, we have a couple of checks. Here is one. This one looks really bad, as does that, because in those cases I think the pawn would take. Not sure what's wrong with this one. It kind of limits the king's moves. Like if it moved there, if it moved forward to h4, we would have mate, and if it moved back, I don't know what we would do then. If it moved to here, we could come in this way, and then it would have to go over there someplace. But that's not that great. It just forces the king to move, and then it kind of stops. That's what it looks like to me. What about here? I know that's not a check, but it threatens the knight. The knight can't move to here or here because its own pieces are in the way. So I think if we went here, the knight would be forced to go back into the corner or there. And from there it would be threatening us. But then couldn't we just take this pawn? That's probably what I would do in a game. Oh wait, what about this check? Is that mate? And that one was only rated 989. You can see right over there, 989. And I was supposed to find that in 8 seconds. Oh my. Well, that is one of my weaknesses. If you've been following along for months, you know that going beyond the king in a strange diagonal or direction with my queen that's not quite pointed at the action is one of my weaknesses. It took me way too long to see that. Okay, let's go on. Oh, that was a little embarrassing. Here we just have a checkmate, don't we? Oh, I got 20 points for that. Well, thank you. Thank you, chess.com, for those 20 points. That one seemed fairly obvious to me. It just took me a second to make sure that the opponent didn't have any pieces guarding that square. Okay, because our knight guards that square, and our queen was right there. That puzzle's rating is pending, so... And it's only been attempted 28 times. I seem to run into a lot of new puzzles, so maybe chess.com is adding new puzzles all the time. Okay, we're at 20 minutes. I usually go to about 30. If you want to keep following along, feel free. I do have a check with this pawn, but then I think the king would just get in front of it. Why haven't I resigned yet is my question. Why haven't I resigned yet? Look at all those pieces the enemy has. Well, there is a check here, which would force the king into one of those squares, and then that would be made. I think that's the answer. Okay. Whew. I almost didn't see that one, too. Okay. That's a check, but do we have a good follow-up? The king goes into the corner, and then... Oh, no, that's not a good check. Good grief. Look at that bishop waiting for us. That little sniper down there is waiting to just get that queen. Oh, well, no, and that same thing is the case here. Those pieces are all protected. I'm not sure. Is it like the last few that there was something we were missing? I realize we have a bishop lined up with our queen, but it can't really go anywhere, can it? Because that piece is triply defended, or that pawn is triply defended by a pawn, a rook, and a bishop. So that check is bad because of the bishop. This check is bad because of the queen. Should we just get our queen out of danger? That seems a little... I don't know. That's bad. That's bad. I mean, we could go there, but what does that accomplish? Does that accomplish anything? I don't think it does. Yeah, I feel like I'm missing something here, but if we don't move our queen, they take our queen. That seems obvious. And that might be our best move, to check. And when they capture back, we take their queen, get their queen and a pawn. We are up the exchange, but our pieces are a little bit not useful right now. This is going to be another pending puzzle, isn't it? I'm going to do it because I don't want to waste any more time. Oh, that was it. Well, now nothing makes sense except taking back. Oh, there's another move. I'm going to suggest getting out of check. That's the only way I can get out of check, isn't it? King to d1. Because their bishop cuts off here. And, of course, their rook is cutting off all of these squares. And this bishop is cutting off there. So I think my only move is d1. I mean, yes, I can block, but they're just going to take that. Okay, and then they checked again. So now that's my only legal move, other than blocking with the pawn, which that's bad because they would just take it. That's a very interesting puzzle, and it's rated nearly 1,500. I am really surprised that was right, and then everything else was too. Okay. Maybe not as hard as some of the 2300 rated puzzles, but... Okay, we can check here because that pawn is pinned. But is it a good check? Does it accomplish anything? I think the king just comes toward us. And if the king comes toward us, then... Wait, there's also this check. I like that check. If we check on e7, the king has to go here or here, and then, well, no, that's not good because of their queen. Here would be mate. Well, they have to block, and then we take it. Okay. All right. Not quite at 30 minutes left yet, so let's keep going. But that one was just a simple mating puzzle. We had to figure out which way to go with the knight first. Okay, I'm playing with the black pieces. I am very attracted to that check, but then the king just comes this way, I think. And we don't really have a way to attack it there, do we? But our queen is in danger. I mean, we could just take it. What if we took it? I think they would take back, wouldn't they? And then we would have this check here. No, because then the knight would block. And the knight would be protected by the queen that's over here now. But then we would win the bishop. Would that be good? We would win a rook and a bishop for queen? No, that's not good. Okay. Never mind. Well, then back to this idea. Queen to h1 check. King not there. King moves out of check here. And that's it. I have no idea. I'm not seeing anything else other than the two ideas that I suggested. Either the queen to h1 check idea, but that goes nowhere, doesn't it? It's not like I could come back and take this knight because that knight is guarded by the king. What else? I couldn't really come back because, again, the queen could just take me. And the other idea that I had was just taking the rook on d4, but I don't know what would keep them from taking back. And I did mention the idea of this check with the rook, and if they would block with the knight, then I could take the bishop. But that's not good. That's not good compensation for a queen. So the check is the most forcing move. So I almost want to do that. Wait, is it then the rook move? Right here? To distract the queen off of the second rank? And then I could bring my queen back to here. But then the king would go there. And then I would come here and it would be mate. Is it going to be that? Because there's nothing else, right? I have to do this. And if the king just escapes out of check, I take the knight and it's mate. And that's their only choices. Their only choices are to move out of the way or take it with their queen. And if they take it with their queen, then I come back here, and they have to go back there. And then that's mate. Wow. Okay, I am now at 30 minutes, so we gained, I think just over 100 points. So thank you for watching. Hopefully some of this was instructive to you. If not, maybe the sound of my voice was pleasant and it helped you to relax or fall asleep. So we'll see you next time.